Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Gopi Janavallabha Radha Gopi Janavallabha Radhe, Jaya Nitai Patita Pavan Gaurari, Jaya Nitai Patita Pavan Gaurari, Pavan Gaurari, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Gaura Bhaktavinda ki jai, Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining today. We'll be reading from beautiful third canto, part 2, Srimad Bhagavatam. Chapter is Canto 3, Chapter 24, the renunciation of Kardama Muni. And we reading 10, verse number 10. Is that right, Prabhuji? We'll recite the verse number 10 again. Canto 3, Chapter 24, Text 10. Bhagavatam Param Brahma Satvenam Shena Shatruhan Tattva Sankhyanā Vijnaptya Jatam Vidwan Ajaswarat Bhagavatam Param Brahma Satvenam Sena Shatruhan Tattva Sankhyanā Vijnaptyai Jatam Vidwan Ajaswarat Bhagavatam Param Brahma Satvenam Sena Shatruhan Tattva Sankhyanā Vijnaptyai Jatam Vidwan Ajaswarat.
Bhagavantam Param Brahma.
Bhagwantam Param Brahma.
Satvenam Sena Shatruhan.
Satvam Sena Shatruhan.
Tattva Sankhya Vijnaptai.
Tattva Sankhya Vijnaptai.
Jatam Vidwan Ajaswarat.
Jatam Vidwan Ajaswarat.
Bhagavantam Param Brahma.
Bhagwantam Param Brahma.
Satvenam Sena Shatruhan.
Satvem Namshena Shatruhan.
Tattva Sankhya Vijnaptai.
Tattva Sankhya Vijnaptyai.
Vidwan Ajaswarat.
Jatam Vidwan Ajaswarat. Word by word translation. Bhagavantam,
Bhagavantam.
the Lord. Param, supreme. Brahma, Brahman. Satvena, having an uncontaminated existence. Amsena, by a plenary portion. Shatruhan, O killer of the enemy. Vidura, Sankhyana, the philosophy of the 24 material elements.
The philosophy of the 24 material elements.
Vijnaptyai,
Vijnaptyai.
for explaining. Jatam, appeared. Vidwan, knowing. Aja, the unborn. Lord Brahma. Swarat, independent. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Maitreya continued, O killer of the enemy, the unborn Lord Brahma, who is almost independent in acquiring knowledge, could understand that a portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his quality of pure existence had appeared in the womb of Devahuti, just to explain the complete state of knowledge known as Sankhya Yoga. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 15 chapter, it is stated that the Lord himself is the compiler of Vedanta Sutra and he is a perfect knower of Vedanta Sutra. Similarly, the Sankhya philosophy is compiled by Supreme Personality of Godhead in his appearance as Kapila. There is an imitation Kapila who has Sankhya philosophy system, but Kapila, the incarnation of God, is different from Kapila. Kapila, the son of Kardama Muni, in his system of Sankhya philosophy, very explicitly explained not only the material world, but also the spiritual world. Brahma could understand the fact because he is Swarat, almost independent in receiving knowledge. He is called Swarat because he did not go to any school or college to learn, but learned everything from within. Because Brahma is the first living creature within this universe, he had no teacher. His teacher was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, who is seated in the heart of every living creature. Brahma acquired knowledge directly from the Supreme Lord within the heart. Therefore, he is sometimes called Swarat and Aja. Another important point is stated here, Satvanam Sena. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears, he brings with him all his paraphernalia of Venkata. Therefore, his name, his form, his quality, his paraphernalia, and his entourage all belong to the transcendental world. Real goodness is in transcendental world. Here in the material world, the quality of goodness is not pure. Goodness may exist, but there must also be some tinges of passion and ignorance. In the spiritual world, the unalloyed quality of goodness prevails. There, the quality of goodness is called as Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness. Another name for Shuddha Sattva is Vasudev, because God is born from Vasudev. Sorry. Another meaning is that when one is purely situated in the quality of goodness, he can understand the form, name, quality, paraphernalia, and entourage of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Amsena also indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna appeared as Kapila Dev in the portion of his portion. God expands either as Kala, or as a Kala, or as Amsha. Amsha means direct expansion, and Kala means expansion of the expansion. There is no difference between the expansion and the expansion of the expansion. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly, as there is no difference between one candle and another, but still the candle from which the other are lit is called the original Krishna. Therefore, is called as Parabrahman, or the ultimate Godhead and cause of all causes. We'll start with the prayer. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurummilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vachakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Akum karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim Yat kripa tamaham bande Shri Gurun Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. Welcome you all for Srimad Bhagavatam class. Seek your blessings before I speak. Yugal Kishore who taught me how to speak, so I don't know how to speak in front of Prabhuji. There's a beautiful verse. I just want to again just reiterate. Srimad Bhagavatam is for those who are pure in his heart and who are pure in their heart and pure in devotion. I lack both these qualities and very, very far away from that. I want to do this as service so that I can actually inspire myself to practice this Bhagavad Dharma. So seek all of your blessings before we start reading this beautiful verse. So renunciation of Kardama Muni. We have been hearing beautiful beautiful revelations, beautiful realization. His Grace Bhagavatacharya Prabhu was sharing yesterday, and before that Shamanand Krishna Prabhu was beautifully explaining about the pastime. Here Lord Kapila is about to be born, or about to be about to appear, and there is a great celebration going on. Everybody knows about Lord Kapila, and Devatas are eager to actually offer their prayers and want to take the darshan of the Lord. Right? Very interestingly, you see across Srimad Bhagavatam, when any incarnation of the Lord is about to appear, there are wonderful prayers being offered by everyone. Actually, you see different Gandharvas, different Devatas are actually coming and offering prayers. I was reading about King Prithu Maharaj. The whole fourth canto is actually prominent, speaking about his wonderful qualities. Very interestingly, you see there how King Prithu Maharaj was born by churning the body of King Veena, and that he created so much of chaos. It's a tough situation to be in. Actually, even in Srimad Bhagavatam, we see this world is actually reminding us of Dukhalaya Mashashvatam. So somehow there is so much of chaos going on. If this guy wasn't the king, then basically the robbers and all those people started stealing and they created a chaos. And then they realized, what do we do? So they didn't realize they somehow gave him enthroned him as a king. And then he created more havoc, and then finally they cursed him to die. And then I'm like, again, when they cursed him to die, again the robbers started chasing, right? And then finally they realized they want to churn the body of King Veena, and Prithu Maharaj is born. And when Prithu Maharaj is born, Prithu Maharaj appeared, different devtas came to actually offer and then glorified him. And he started saying, well, I haven't started doing anything yet. Why are you glorifying me? That is a very beautiful point. Very important quality of humility is being portrayed there, where he says, what am I? So they glorify him, saying that, this is what you're going to do, and we already know about it, right? So here, similar thing, Lord Brahma actually knows that Lord Kapila Dev is going to come and he's going to talk about the Sankhya philosophy. And Prabhupada beautifully clarifies the previous Kapila, which is just only covering the material aspect, but this incarnation of the Lord is covering the material aspect about the material world and the spiritual world, right? So that is what Prabhupada is talking about. I also like few points which I wanted to talk about here, about Lord Brahma. There are two important words which are Aja and Surat. Aja is beautifully translated here as the unborn, the Lord Brahma, right? And then Surat is independent. And Prabhupada clarifies almost independent. Very, very clear. Prabhupada is so subtle in details. Yes, he is independent, but he is almost independent, not completely independent, because Lord Vishnu is the only one who is completely independent, right? And here, everybody is coming to actually celebrate the occasion of Lord's appearance. Now, very interestingly, you see the quality here Prabhupada is clarifying in terms of in this material world, we don't have Shuddha Sattva. There is mode of goodness, but Shuddha Sattva is only on the transcendental plane. And here here he says, one second. The word Amshana also indicates that the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna, appeared as Kapil Dev with the portion of portion. God expands either as a Kala and Amsha. And then here he explains, there is no difference between the expansion and the expansion of the expansion, the Supreme Personality of God directly, as there is no difference between the candle and another one from which it is lit. Right. So I was actually contemplating on this verse, and based on what we spoke before, I was hearing a beautiful class by His Holiness Radhanand Maharaj, where he was talking about, I was sharing with Prabhuji while coming from Toronto. Real intelligence comes from sincerity. That's the title of that class. And now this is very important when we talk about the Shuddha Sattva, and that very important aspect is that Prabhupada clarifies that how did Lord Brahma get all this knowledge from? He is unborn and he got all this knowledge from Krishna, directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, I was just connecting these dots all together, and I was just reading chapter 9, text 1. Chapter 9 Bhagavad Gita is entitled as the most confidential knowledge. And Prabhupada very beautifully explains the connection between chapter 7 and chapter 9. Chapter 7 is also about the transcendental knowledge, and chapter 9 is the most confidential knowledge. So Prabhupada clarifies that the difference between 7th chapter and 9th chapter, now Krishna is trying to, I'm just putting my words here, is going to share the secret sauce. And this is pure unalloyed devotion he talks about. In that verse, he talks about, Krishna says in this verse translation, he says the Supreme Personality of Prabhupada says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, because you are not envious, that is why I'm ready to impart this knowledge and realization. Now, Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopi Janala Bhagavana ki jai, Shri Shri Nitai Patita Pavana Gaurari ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Because you are not envious of me, so I am now trying to impart this transcendental knowledge to you and realization. And when you get that both, the material world, the I don't remember the exact word, but basically the turbulence of the material world will not impact you, right? So here, Brahmaji not just acquired the knowledge, but he also was imparted the realization of that knowledge, right? So here, when I was hearing this class, this is actually when Hiranyaksha is basically killed by Varadev, and then he is killed, and then Hiranyakashipu. Now this is very interesting aspect, and I just love this aspect. Um, Hiranyakashipu is trying to preach to his mother, his sister-in-law. He's trying to preach them about the science of the soul. Wow, this is interesting. Maharaj explains very nicely that even in the earlier times, the demons knew the reality of the spirituality. They knew that I'm just a part and parcel of Krishna. Hiranyakashipu knows about it, that Lord Vishnu is the source of all everything, right? And that's the question which he asked Prahlad Maharaj, where are you getting all these powers from? And Prahlad Maharaj beautifully says, from the same source where you are driving this energy from. So he knows that the source of all my knowledge, the source of my existence is Lord Vishnu, but he is not realizing that knowledge. What is what the difference between a demon, and I with this definition which I heard, I just got completely bewildered. The difference between a devotee and demon is, devotee doesn't want to compete with Lord. He doesn't want to be the controller. He doesn't want to be the proprietor. He doesn't want to be the enjoyer. And that is a difference between a demon and a devotee. So here Hiranyakashipu is understanding that he is the source of everything, but he wants to compete. He wants to kill God to become God. Right? That is the mentality. And why is he having that? Again, coming back to the chapter 9, because he's envious. He's envious of the Lord and he wants to take his position. That is why he wants to compete with the Lord. And he wants to actually become God. And this is one important quality which is very important, which I was hearing. Knowledge can come by our own endeavor. And with the knowledge, the intelligence comes. But the realization is something we can't get by ourselves. We need to have the blessings of Vaishnavas, and we need to have the blessings of spiritual master and Krishna to reveal these realization. I may spend years and years and years in Krishna consciousness, but without any realization. I was just remembering when Her Grace Anuradha Priya Mataji passed away, and we all went for crematorium ceremony. I was sitting in the corner, just introspecting and just trying to understand what is going on. And I was really mesmerized with how Anant Vilas Prabhu actually took that whole conversation. I'm sure we all were mesmerized about that. He utilized that opportunity to preach about Krishna. And Maharaj says a beautiful point in this class. The best place to preach is crematorium. Because now we understood, and when we come out of it, we think about, the world is great, I'm great, nothing is going to happen to me. That's the question Yaksha is explaining to Yudhishthira, right? Everybody sees the other person is going, but thinks that I'm not going, I'm just going to stay here forever, though we hear so much about it. So he was utilizing that opportunity to preach about Krishna. And it takes one to know one, right? So I was just thinking about how much difficulty he is going through. I just experienced a month back, and I was like, how much is his conviction? How much his faith is there in Krishna? And whatever he was saying, whatever he was speaking about Krishna, glorifying Krishna with sincere heart, where is this realization coming from? Because when one is very sincere practicing Krishna consciousness, Lord empowers them to actually give them that realization, and the same experience a karmi also goes through, and sometimes even the devotee, but the same realization doesn't come. What is the difference? The experience is the same. I was just thinking about myself. I had zero realization. The experience is same. However, what is coming as an output is purely dependent on individual person. How we grow in Krishna consciousness is purely dependent on the faith. Where does the faith come from? The faith is not coming from our own endeavor. The faith is coming from when we associate with devotees who have strong faith. And what is the significance? Why someone has more faith versus some person have a very limited faith like me? I was remembering, this is in Sydney 2007 and 8. Lot of young like 20s and late 20s or mid 20s people joined, devotees joined in Sydney temple. So we would all get together, we would sit together. Then Sundari joined before, and then I joined later. So one devotee, after I moved to Pune, and then all of a sudden I'm just in the temple, Radha Kunjbehari temple there. So one devotee pats me from behind. And then when I saw him back, he was wearing an orange saffron shaved head. Prabhu, did you recognize me? I'm like, no, Prabhu. And then he actually said, you remember in Sydney temple, we were together, and he said, oh yes, Prabhu. Bole, I am actually now the personal servant of His Grace Krishan Das Adhikari Prabhu. Orange saffron, joined together. What is the difference? I was just thinking about, and I keep repeating this example because it is so strongly baked in. It is about the amount of faith we have on Krishna and amount of conviction we have that the path which I'm practicing is the sublime path. That is actually making one go 1,000 miles an hour, and some person just go at 20 miles per hour, right? Year by year, we just 2023 is here. Maybe in few months, 2024 will be there. But what is exactly just changing? How can I actually measure where my faith is? I was driving to Toronto for my visa stamping. And this time it apparently looked like it's a tough one. I just don't know, because I just goofed up something. And I'm like completely bewildered. What would happen if they reject my interview? Will I again be kicked out? Where will I do? Where will I stay? And immediately the Paramatma within my heart says, this is the faith you have. Very strong point which came. Where is our faith? Every moment in Krishna consciousness, every moment in our material life, and we are somehow utilizing this body to dovetail everything in Krishna's service, what should we ask ourselves? How much faith I have grown? Am I actually practicing Krishna consciousness with the intensity, with the sincerity, which is what I was talking about, right? So here, coming back to the point, which is about sincerity, what is the same supreme personality of God? The Paramatma is there within every living entity. Even he is there within the heart of Hiranyakashipu. Why the same person is trying to compete with the Lord, and on the opposite side, his son is trying to actually be the servant of the Lord. Same Paramatma there within the father as well as the child. The difference is based on our desires. Very deep point which I was hearing. The type of desire drives our faith, and based on our desire, Krishna sanctions and material energy provides. That's what we read in Bhagavad Gita. Now this is very interesting. Now when we say Krishna, God is not impartial, or he's not impartial, he's not partial, sorry, right? Then it apparently look like he's partial. Not really. This is one thing which we need to understand. One thing which we all have, and these are ABCs of Krishna consciousness. One thing which we all have is our free will. Krishna doesn't intervene with the free will. So here, Hiranyakashipu wants to compete with the Lord, and Lord is making sure that faith that he can compete with the Lord and he'll become the Lord is becoming stronger and stronger. You see a beautiful picture. Not here, but when you see Hiranyakashipu is fighting with Lord Nrsimhadev is fighting with Hiranyakashipu, the picture which is portrayed is Lord Nrsimhadev is like huge, and Hiranyakashipu is like tiny, taking the sword. It is like a child just fighting with some wrestler, that thinking that with the tiny sword, with the place, it clearly sees what is the point. Is he going to win? No, not at all. There are zero chances that he's going to win over Lord Nrsimhadev. Even if the Karmi sees that picture, man, what this tiny guy is going to do with this such a giant personality. And he is still thinking that I'm going to win. That is the conviction Paramatma gives, that in spite of whatever I'm position, my capacity is, I can compete with the Lord. And he is making sure that, he feels he wins. We were just discussing about Lord Varadev's pastime, It's a beautiful pastime we just went through just few months back, right? So Hiranyaksh, when he hits with the fist and then Varadev falls off, and then he feels, oh, look at me, I'm so powerful. But at the same time, the important part is Lord Varadev is making him feel, oh, you're going to win. It's not that he's going to win, right? Similar thing, it happens with Krishna in Kaliya's time, Kaliya's pastime. So Krishna apparently looks like when Vrajavasis sees Krishna, they are so, what is going to happen to our little Krishna? And Krishna apparently looks like, oh, Kaliya is going to win. And then Krishna is just going to go away like that, right? There are multiple pastimes where Krishna apparently looks like, oh, he's being, defeated. But he wins over, right? So that's actually Krishna, based on our desire, based on our sincerity, he instills that faith in us that this is how it is going to move forward. And I was thinking about, on the similar plane, when we come to devotional service, when we come to the devotional path, I'm just thinking about myself. I want to do minimal and I want to get the maximum, right? When we just talk about the effort and mercy, when we compare the amount of effort which is being put in compared to the mercy we receive, like if you take an example about, we were just discussing in Prabhupada's class on Monday about renunciation, or which is doing austerity. Actually, not renunciation, we're talking about austerity. If we see the amount of austerity we do compared to Hiranyakashipu, it's just like a mustard seed, man. This is thousands of years of tapasya, or even when we hear about Dhruv Maharaj's pastime, within 6 months he got to see the Lord, why I'm not getting. Sometimes these questions come, but you see the intensity of the tapasya he is doing, with so much of conviction that, I'm going to receive what I'm looking for. Somehow we lack that conviction that this is a path which is going to give me the ultimate destination which I'm looking for. And that is one thing which I realized. What is the difference Anant Vilas Prabhu created during that day? He spoke with so much of conviction. And I'm just looking at people are coming and crying with him. And he is not crying, he's standing. I'm like, hold on, who is coming to console whom? So it apparently looks like the person who should be crying is very firm, he is very stable in that situation. It's a big thing. Like I was hearing in the same class, Maharaj just talking about, you see any problem of the world, there may be some resolution. You can think, oh, maybe if I'm sick, I'll try Dr. A, Dr. B, Dr. C. I have some hope. I'll try this hospital, I'll try that hospital. If I have financial, like I was just hearing another class by Anand Vrindavan Prabhu. It's a beautiful class. He talks about on his 60th birthday, he talks about Krishna gave me so much. So much. If you hear his realization, such a detached, such a renounced person. He's a grasta, and I was just mesmerized. He was just sharing how he was saving Lakshmi, and at the same time he was giving his wife a very minimal amount. And then at the same time he was just talking about his father who invested the whole money in stock market, and stock market broke. And he was just thinking about himself, and he wasn't doing any of that. He was just telling, see, this is the point. Being in the world but off the world. He is sitting in the stock exchange, and he was talking about this is the most filthy place in the entire world. But he is like a lotus. He's not affected. He never played. He used the word satta. I don't know what is in English. Maybe gamble. I just don't know. So he just talks about, in spite of being there, he never does that. He was sharing his example that he was offered he had a salary of 25,000 to 50,000 a month. This another guy gave him 2 crore per month. And he's like, oh, Radha Gopinath temple is being built. I can utilize this Lakshmi in building that temple. He's just thinking about that thing. I can utilize this Lakshmi. And he goes and approaches His Grace Devamrita Prabhu, now His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Swami Maharaj. Prabhu, Krishna doesn't need your money. He needs you. And he's like, you don't understand. Can you see the difference? But he knew that Bhakti Rasamrita Swami Maharaj was actually, he did his master's in finance, right? So he knows what it takes, and he left everything. He was just talking about, he put all the Lakshmi in the hundi and took his, so he understood. It was very difficult decision for him, but he followed. So he was talking about the principle of simplicity just by practicing that part. So coming back to this point, which I was talking about, that when someone is actually thinking about, I have financial challenges, I have health challenges, I have relationship challenges, many things, you can resolve in a certain way. But a person, a loved one actually leaves the body, you can't get that person back. Done. That's it. You can't talk to that person. You can't see that person. You can't have loving exchanges with that person. You can't get the inspiration the same way you were driving when in the personal life. You can't get that. Now you have to just live without that person. And it takes a little time to actually realize, and it becomes even worse. Like Prabhuji was talking about, after a month is passed, now you actually understood, man, that person is not going to come back. It just becomes extremely tough, right? But during that time, here we see Hiranyaksham. This is Hiranyak. After Hiranyaksha is passed away, Hiranyakashipu was trying to preach, and he consoled his mother and then mother and sister-in-law, saying that, that's how the reality of the soul. But somehow, you see the example of Mother Kunti. How much she went through. I spoke about that the other day. I was actually, while coming back, I was hearing another class by His Grace Govind Prabhu on Nirjala Ekadashi. He was giving in glories of Bhimsen. Very interesting. He's one of the very important personality of Pandavas, which I really want to understand what is going on. And then he was actually sharing about how much Draupadi went through. Right? This is one thing which, when I heard, I literally had tears in my eyes thinking about it. So when they go for that vanvas for 12 years, 12 years, Prabhuji, is that right? Duryodhana is thinking where they are, right? So what is happening here? I'll just talk about it. So now they are living in Virat, right? They are living in Virat Desh. There, Virat's wife's brother, what is his name? Kichak, right? He is there, and again, very similar. His situation is like Shakuni. That's not his Rajya. He is living outside his Rajya, but he's staying with his sisters. This very similar like Shakuni, right? And he sees Mother Draupadi, and Draupadi actually told that, to this wife of Virat, saying that, my 5 Gandharvas husband, I took a vow, I'm just going to be there. So do you understand that stuff? And this Kichak is saying, I want to enjoy her. He's telling to Virat's wife. And she told, she's not that person. Just, this is a reality. He says, no, you arrange, I will take care of her. And she gives a wine, you take it. And then she tells to Draupadi, you take it to Kichak. And she said, I told you about it. She said, yeah, but just take it. So somehow Draupadi is trying to come here, and she is trying to be molested by this guy, and somehow she escapes, and she comes. Now this is really painful. This is one point which I just want to contemplate and want to go deeper on this aspect. When she comes back, somehow she escorts herself, and she comes, and then Yudhishthira Maharaj is playing with Virat, and Bhima is sitting next to him, and she tells him, saying that, look at what this guy is doing, and what King Virat is saying, well, this is between you and him. I don't want to be involved. And she approaches Yudhishthira Maharaj. Yudhishthira Maharaj again doesn't say anything. And then she approaches Bhima. Bhima is watching, and Bhima is looking at the tree outside to tell him, saying that, I'm going to pull this tree and make you flat. But Yudhishthira Maharaj says, no, you calm down. Right? So somehow He kicks Draupadi really badly. She's bleeding. And then she just leaves from there crying. Next day or that night, she comes to Bhima and cries. They don't know, I have husbands who are actually just like similar point which Mother Sita is telling to Ram. Ye bow and arrow kis cheez ke liye rakha hai, whether are you going to use it sometime, right? Like she's telling ke mere husband are they are like just they can't do anything, And Bhima is very angry. So somehow he arranges that King Khichak comes to one of the crematorium area because he didn't want to do everything in front of the other folks. So he wears Draupadi's dress and comes there, and Khichak thinks, I'm going to enjoy Draupadi. And then the moment he holds his or her hand, he realizes, man, this is not the hand of a woman. And then Bhima smashes him really badly. He puts him like a ball, removes his hand, put his head inside, and makes him a ball and kicks him. And then now this is even worse, right? And then he gives to Draupadi. What happens after that? The other people in the Virat, when they got to know, they didn't know that Bhima killed him and all that stuff. So now they are trying to cremate this guy. And they are saying Draupadi should also be cremated with him. She should also be burnt alive. She's not the wife of that person, but they are thinking like that. And now this time, Bhima doesn't care about who all are there. He pulls the same tree and then smashes all these folks here, right there, right? Now, when we think about Draupadi, what does it feel when your husband is right there? He can't do anything or he's not doing anything. See, that is the situation in this material world, which Draupadi is actually trying to teach us, irrelevant of whatever resources we have, irrelevant of, sorry, what's the time? I forgot. 9:04. Okay, I'll wind up this. Whatever resources we have, nothing is going to come for our rescue. And that is a beautiful aspect. When she is being disrobed, she is actually calling out, Lord Mukunda, that you please deliver me. Oh Keshava, please come. And Lord appears in the form of holy name and reciprocates and saves her. Mother Kunti was just hearing about this. When you hear Mahabharata, actually, the one realization it should give us is the brutality of this material world. Even such devotees like Mother Kunti, Mother Draupadi, Pandavas have to go through so much difficulty. Here, Mother Kunti has been suffering from the childhood. But what does he ask? What is she asking Krishna? That I want to suffer forever. Because when I am experiencing that pain, then I remember you intensely. Now, such an elevated devotees are praying that they want to have misery and we want to run. At least I think about myself, I want to run away. Like I was just sharing this point. When Nayan Sundari went through lung transplant, first one, a very complicated story. In terms of, there was no hope in terms of whether she'll get the lungs. And her situation is completely on the edge. She gets the lungs, she recovers, and my mind says, man, I think the karmas are over now. Nothing more is going to come. And it hit even harder than the first time. The realization which that brought me to it is this material world is not, we cannot trust this material world. We cannot trust on the time. It can hit us anytime really hard, and it can be even harder than the first time. Because somehow first time you pass through, but second time it becomes even intense because now you remember the first experience thinking that, oh, you know what, nothing is going to happen to me. Right? Similar thing which we are talking about when we talk about coming back to this verse, when Lord is about to appear, when we relish these wonderful pastimes, we remind ourselves to actually aspire to go to the spiritual world and relish those wonderful pastimes. Like Prabhuji was saying, spiritual world is a reality. For how long we are going to live in theoretical Krishna consciousness? I'm trying to remind myself. We accept Krishna is there. We accept spiritual world is there. We accept that, that is the goal of life. But somehow, laulyam, that eagerness to practice Krishna consciousness with sincerity doesn't come. And when we actually come to that platform of having a sincere life, I was talking about Anand Vilas Prabhu, I was talking about Anand Vrindavan Prabhu. What are these beautiful pastimes showing us? When we practice spiritual life with sincerity, Krishna gives us intelligence to discriminate. What should I do? What shouldn't I do? Right? Even though the volume may be very far away, but we hanker for that and we practice spiritual life with sincerity. I was just sharing that yesterday. I was actually alone there in Toronto, so there was nothing much to be done. So I finished my 16 rounds in the morning itself. Read 4, 5, excuse me, read 5 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam. Great. What should I do now? Work isn't that much. So what should I do? Mind was saying, oh, you have to finish that and finish that. I know. I didn't want to chant. I'll be very honest. Didn't feel like chanting, but I just picked the beat bag, chanted 5, 6 rounds, and then finished some of the other work which I had to do. Sincerity is very far away, but actually Paramatma within our heart is always inspiring us to take up that extra mile. I want to go an extra mile. This is 2023, but what I'm going to do? Shamanand Krishna Prabhu beautifully says, very, very important bullet line. We should live a life of goal. We should have a goal-oriented life. What am I going to do in 2023? When we have those goals that I want to read Bhagavatam, I want to read Chaitanya Charitamrita, I want to serve Vaishnavas, I want to chant more rounds, I want to chant sincere rounds. That is how actually Krishna reciprocates and our intelligence becomes completely clear. And similarly, coming back to this point where Krishna is saying, we can become almost independent, like Lord Brahma. What is independent? Independence here means not my own independence. I am like a puppet, like Prabhupada says. I want to be a puppet in the hand of Krishna rather than in the hand of material energy. That is the goal of our life. So I'll summarize here this beautiful verse. Lord Brahma is coming to take the darshan of Lord Kapila. And then we are talking about the glories of Lord Brahma, that he is Aja and he is Swarat, right? And that is what we focused on, talking about the knowledge should come with realization, which we connected with chapter 9. And how did the realization comes? It doesn't come by our own endeavor. It comes by our sincerity. With the sincerity, by practicing Krishna consciousness with sincerity, we gain a sharp intelligence which actually helps us to discriminate how can I grow, what is favorable to Krishna and what is unfavorable to Krishna, and what is favorable for Krishna consciousness and what is unfavorable for Krishna consciousness. With that, I would like to end. Please forgive me. I just went astray and talk about a different topic, but I realized that it's very important for me at least to apply sincerity in my Krishna consciousness so that I can somehow reach to the goal of life. With all of your blessings, I really want to sincerely seek your blessing so that I can actually practice that in my life. And actually, while I read Srimad Bhagavatam, it should actually sit in my heart. When I'm sleeping, when I'm awake, whatever time, I just want to relish those wonderful pastimes. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveda Gaura Bhaktavinda ki jai.
Jai.
Prabhuji, would you like to add something? Thank you. Any comments on Zoom or here?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanotpana all goes to Prabhupada. Gurudev.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Prabhu. I have one realization in the Anuradha Priya Mataji, the memorial Prabhuji.
Please
I was
go.
there, right? And Anu Prabhu was talking like anything, no crying, no nothing. Then I was bewildered a little bit. How can he manage with the small kids?
Yes,
just
Prabhu.
like you. Then after finishing, then I realized this is like a pure devotee consciousness, not like mundane like me. Then I was coming with carpooling with one senior devotee. I don't want to mention his name, and he was telling like, because there is a lot of other people also. How come he's preaching? He should have say some sad words, this word, that one. Then I said that's the difference between a pure devotee who realize everything depends on Krishna, and those devotees don't care for mundane people. Wherever there is opportunity, they preach. That's it.
Amazing.
So that was like big realization for me. Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful class.
Amazing, Prabhu. Thank you so much for sharing that, Prabhu. We hear this line so many times, but we need examples around us. How one handles the provoking situation and how he responds to that provoking situation shows how intense the Krishna consciousness is. I'll be very honest, the time will reveal so many different personalities in our temple who are actually practicing with so much intensity. What we lack is to actually have their association. And I was just talking about it. We should use each and every opportunity to come together in a forum where we associate with many devotees, because we don't know who is who, and only time will reveal. So that's why it's very important to utilize every opportunity to associate, rather than, I know there are so many commitments we have at home, so many commitments or so many job and other things, but I think one thing we should aspire, at least as part of 2023, I don't want to miss a single class. I don't want to miss a single festival. I don't want to miss a single Sunday feast. I think this is one thing which we should work on. At least I'm thinking about myself, because I'm lacking there. Thank you so much. Any other points which we like to add here?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranams. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Prabhuji, I actually really like the point that the difference lies in the fact that the amount of faith that we had and the points that you brought from Guru Maharaj's class. So that will hopefully, Prabhuji, by the mercy of devotees, and because my endeavors will not work, but yes, the hope is there that faith will increase. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Amazing point. Thank you, Mataji. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Dandavat pranam. I liked how you said that I want to be Krishna's puppet as opposed to being a puppet in the hands of this material world. I think if we understand this point, it would make things a lot more easier for us, that we are Krishna's puppets. Hare Krishna.
Please pray for me so that I can also realize that. Thank you. You want to go ahead?
Quote from Jayadeva.
Please.
Yes, there are two things one has to endure in every birth. One is we lose association with dear ones, and the second problem is that we are forced to accept things that we do not want.
We are
That
forced.
We are forced to accept things that we do not want.
Beautiful. That second aspect is even more beautiful, that we are forced. I don't want it, but I will have to go through it. It's amazing. Thank you, Prabhu. Any other point which we like to add before we end up? I'm sorry, I just went over time today. I just didn't realize the clock wasn't working. Okay. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveta Gaurabhakti. Again, if you like any points, please pray for me. Please pray for my family so that we can imbibe those qualities and grow, because without your prayer, I can't understand. I have to be a puppet. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. And
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Hare
Krishna, Prabhu.